Daphne Ebanoff. I really would like to see this removed. I think I do agree, let the business people do the business. I think you're going to hinder the whole boat industry on an island, not allowing storage. And I would love to see a marina go in. That's where I met my husband, right there in front of Harry A's. He used to anchor his boat there. Brought many an oyster home. So that needs to be opened up and worked again. And then when that happens, where's everyone going to store their boats? Okay? Visitors alike. So I really think you guys should think about canning this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any public comment?
Marilyn Bean, St. George Island. I've been a realtor on the island for over 30 years, and my concern is keeping the integrity of our commercial zoning. As Alan said, it's such a small parcel on the island that I'd like to see added to the prohibited uses is single-family homes. In other words, no more skinny mannies on the island. It's fine to have a building, a commercial building, and residents above, but no more skinny mannies.
Thank you for your comment. Please come forward, public comment.
George Floyd again, and I just want to bring forward all the comments that I made in the planning meeting to this meeting. I won't go through them all again, but would ask that they be brought forward as if I had. Is that doable?
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comment? Come forward, state your name for the record.
Shannon Hartsfield. I was just curious. You know commercial vessels, so it means if oysters ever come back on East Toll, that means oyster boats wouldn't be able to leave their boats there on the island anymore either. I mean, they used to leave them on their trailers and stuff right there at the boat landing. I mean, you're changing a whole industry by non-commercial vessels. A lot of friends has made, a lot of oysters made a lot of friends on the island. Used to live in their empty lots, leave their oyster boats there. Those are all commercial vessels. That's going to be doing away with all those as well. I just an idea. I just wondered.
Thank you for your comment. There being no further public comment, commissioner comment?
Mr. Chairman, I have some things to say. Not trying to necessarily address all the myriad of questions we got during a public comment session, because that wasn't really a time for us to address them. This idea of a business overlay or an overlay district for the island, I have heard this cause quite a bit myself personally. I grew up here. You know, all of us have those different claims. I've also been in that marina or that harbor that used to be there that the Corps of Engineers abandoned because it was an unmaintainable channel. So I'm not knowing the situations that are going on here. But for it to be portrayed as this is about one particular project or one particular deal is a farce. St. George Island has never had its due process of having a commissioner that would stand up and try to get something done for it. That is what this is for. Does it make everybody pleased? No, no actions of government ever will. I don't think I can recall any that have in history. So for it to be portrayed that we are just somehow trying to do what we want to do and it's all about one or two people is wrong. And I wanted to state that publicly.
Any other commissioner comment?
I've got something, Mr. Chairman. I like Miss Marilyn Bean's idea of restricting skinny minis in that area. I sure do. I like her idea. I don't know if we need to incorporate it. I don't know how the other board members feel about it.
Would that be part of what I brought up before, of making
Yeah.
it a true C4?
Yeah.
Would that be, address that?
That's basically what would be, Commissioner John.
Okay.
But I support it. True C4.
Any other commissioner comment? Pleasure of the board.
I would like to ask before we get that far, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to change any language, do we have to do it before we proceed?
You have to ask the attorney about that.
What was the question, Commissioner Jones?
Well, Commissioner Sanders and I both have kind of curtailed off one of the public comments. if there was gonna be any
Oh,
language
this is-
changed in the ordinance, does it have to be done before any vote is taken?
Yes, if you're going to take any additional action along those lines, there would have to be some further discussion. I would have to figure out how to, we'd have to make sure there's a meeting in the minds of the board, and then I would amend the ordinance to incorporate that language once or after a vote is taken. I mean, there's no way for me to do it here live right now. I have to go back to the office, but I could certainly go back to the office and make that change. How do y'all want to proceed?
Well, I would like to make a motion that we, as part of this district overlay, make things that are C4 be true C4. They can't be just residents only. They could be commercial with a residence on top, but not just residents only in that commercial district. Again, there's only so much there, folks. It's only ever gonna be so much. I'd like to make the motion and we'll see how it goes.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Sanders. Any further discussion?
Yes, Commissioner Chairman, just to clarify, that your motion was to adopt the ordinance with the change that you just
Yes.
stated, that you've defined
That
on
is
the record
correct.
as true C4.
That is correct.
That's what you adding something to it?
Yes, sir, we would be adding in a new prohibition in that overlay area, which would prohibit, essentially, as one of the commenters stated, single-family residences in that business district. Right now, you have a C4 mixed-use zoning that allows either pure commercial, pure residential, or you could have commercial on the bottom and residential on the top. Those are the current three options that you have in your C4 district. The motion and the second, as I understand it, is you're going to remove one of those three uses, which would remove the pure residential use of C4 property within that area, leaving at that point either pure pure commercial, or you could have a mixed use with a commercial building or commercial use on the bottom floor and a residential use on the second floor.
Is you taking anything out? Is they taking anything out?
Yes, you'd be taking away that ability to have a pure residential use of a parcel of land within the C4 area. I mean, they could still have mixed use, which is commercial on the bottom, residential on the top, or they could have pure commercial. But what's been suggested is have a prohibition in the St. George Island overlay area that would prohibit pure residential on the top and the bottom floor.
Well, let me ask you a question. What about that oyster deal? Is that in there for the parking of the boats?
What, I did not understand.
The parking of the boats, what Shannon just
Oh,
said?
Mr. Hartfield's comment, yeah, well, he's correct. I mean, within that overlay district on vacant lands that are non-governmental lands, because the only exemption from the ordinance restrictions are governmental lands. So any lands that are owned by the county government, the state government, or the United States government would not be subject to these restrictions. But as far as just parking boats on vacant lots within that overlay district would be prohibited.
Probably Commissioner Lockley and
Both commercial and
understand, most of the places being parked is on the edge of the right of way, so it would not be part of the ordinance. I mean, most, where they're parking now, where they used to park out there on the boat ramp or the illegal DOT boat ramp, that's not, that's government land, it's DOT right of way, so it would not be covered by the overlay.
If that is the fact, then yes, they would be exempt from the overlay.
Well, they can't take that out?
Well, you want them to stop parking? I mean,
I want them to be contingent.
right, so they would not, this ordinance overlay, if they're parking on the DOT right of way, would not apply, they could still park there.
I'm talking about inside somebody give them permission to park on their lot.
Well, then they would be prohibited, because that would be private property in the overlay district.
Correct.
Well, can you park your own boat in there?
But as long as it is an improved piece of land, it can have up to 2 boats stored.
What
If
happens, you
it's
got more than
vacant-
two?
If it's vacant, if it's vacant land, then you would not be allowed to store the boats on vacant land, as this ordinance is presently drafted.
Any other commissioner comment? We do have a motion and a second on the floor, is that correct?
Yes, motion by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Sanders.
Any further commissioner comment?
I'm fine.
There being no further commissioner comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect Commissioner Lockley opposed. Motion carried. We'll now move to the next.
Yes, we have one more public hearing. This is the public hearing. Are you ready for me to proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Somebody's moaning and groaning back there. Everybody all right? No, we moving on. The next one will be, county commissioners will now be in recess. We'll open up the meeting of the local planning agency to consider metal structures and pole barns.
Yes, sir. The title of the ordinance for the record is an ordinance of Franklin County, Florida, creating development standards and restrictions for the use of metal structures and pole barns as a single-family detached dwelling within Franklin County, providing for definitions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would recommend that the board take public comment.
The land planning agency is now taking public comment on the pole barn, metal building, metal structure. Any public comment, please come forward, state your name for the record.
Hi. I work with metal. I love metal. I do have concern with the, even on the language on the pole barn. On D, the exterior covered, wall covering shall be of a material other than metal. I'm always getting trade magazines, go to trade shows. There's metal panels that are actually like 4-inch to 6-inch thermo-insulated foam that have texture of wood, can look like stucco, or even a corrugated kind of panel. So I think to limit even what's going on at what's called a metal pole barn, you're definitely limiting what could be done for the sense of efficiency in the building industry on residentials. I'm not just talking on glorious modern structure. I understand that's been stricken from the conversation. We're just talking about the pole barns, but I still think you still need to keep a little open mind on what metal is these days. I think it almost needs to be looked like at the building department. They need to look and evaluate, looking at the elevations of a house and the product before we go into hard language on what can and cannot be done. Sorry, I'm shaky. I need to eat. And I'm going to quote a friend of mine, Christian Anderson, was very disappointed to hear that you guys are not going to allow shipping containers as possibly being a form of residential homes. They are doing wonderful thing with shipping containers in the modern design sense. And like I've said before at other meetings, we're the forgotten coast doesn't mean we have to forget what's going on in the building industry and around the country and the nation. And this in a county where housing is an issue, we really do need to keep open alternative building and not just limit it to look like a cute house with a porch on it. Things can be beautiful and not have a porch. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Public comment, please come forward, state your name for the record. No further public comment?
Do the commissioners have any comments or direction for me before I proceed to go through the ordinance? All right. Again, commissioners, I'm not going to read the entire ordinance. Essentially, there are the authority that you're invoking to enact this ordinance is your home rule authority and your authority under Chapter 125 Florida statutes. The findings of fact in summary have reached a finding of fact that you believe it is necessary with the health interest and welfare of the citizens of the county to create an ordinance regulating how pole barns and metal buildings can be used as residential dwellings. There's definitions that provide a definition of a metal structure, provide a definition of a pole barn dwelling. One addition, after talking to your building official, one addition that I've made to that, at his request, is that the definition of pole barn dwelling shall exclude site-built homes using standard wooden framing. He thought it was important to have that distinction between a standard wooden framed house that's built on site as opposed to a pole barn or a metal structure that comes, basically pre-constructed. You just assemble it on site. I have also added, again, at Mr. Carrington's request, a definition for what is the front of a corner lot, and it's the same definition as in the previous ordinance. The front of a corner lot should be the narrower lot line abutting on a public street. In talking to your building official, he was concerned about requiring that a porch run the entire width of the front of a building, and he suggested that it be at least the porch that's 1/2 the width of the front of the building and 6 feet wide, so I've made that change for your consideration. Your building official wanted to make some changes to the roof line. He wanted me to strike out the word gable roof and just simply say a roof, which would mean whether it's a gable or some other form of roof, it would be allowed. But he wanted there to be a minimum roof pitch of 412 or more for that roof, so I've made that change. As far as the general prohibition that the exterior wall of these metal structures or pole barns being used as dwellings, there is a general prohibition against metal siding. However, again, in talking with your building official, came up with the language that said that metal residential dimensional lap siding will be allowed, providing that it's no more than 10 inches in width. And the whole purpose of that is to have that lap siding so it looks more like a residence as opposed to just like a huge sheet of flat tin or metal, to make it look more residential and fit, better with the residential neighborhoods that will be perhaps constructed in. As far as the prohibitions 1 through 7, that has not changed since our first public hearing. These pole barns and metal buildings shall not be used for multifamily dwellings. They shall not combine their storage space and the single-family dwelling under the same roof within the same structure, unless that storage space is contained within the exterior walls of the single-family dwelling, and that's to solve the problem that we ran into over on, I believe it was South Bay Shore Drive. There's still a 2,000 square foot maximum of heated and cooled space for a metal structure or pole barn dwelling. And it still allows an attached garage, but it cannot exceed 600 square feet. The structure cannot exceed more than 1 story. And it does have the prohibition that shipping containers shall not be used as a residential dwelling.
Do these structures have to meet the Southern Building Code? Wind loads?
Yes.
All that type of stuff?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah, that was, maybe it was a discussion that we had at the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's my recollection of what Miss Amy had, her answer to that question to one of the meetings we went to for Planning and Zoning.
Okay, I just didn't see it in the ordinance itself.
It's not, I can certainly add that in.
I think it needs to be in here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you allow somebody to build an inferior structure and these things blow down during a hurricane, then they're gonna look back at the county and say, well, you allowed it to be built without, I mean, I know what you're saying, but it needs to be included in the ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Because I just don't want nobody building a tar paper shack and a hurricane comes by and it blows the shack away, and somebody get hurt in the meantime. But that's my only comment.
Let me ask you a question. What all this cover? One area or the whole county?
This covers the entire county and all of your residentially zoned categories. So anywhere you could build a single-family residence will be impacted by this ordinance.
Everywhere but Appalachian Caribbean, right?
That's right.
I have not made that distinction in the ordinance, but yes, that is correct. This is not, whatever we want to, as we did with the animal control ordinance that we discussed early this morning, when we want to have an ordinance affect the municipal corporations, I always put that specific language in there, but I will add language clarifying this is only for the unincorporated areas.
Yeah, so I wanna know, can somebody build one like up on the hill?
This
They
ordinance,
have to get
City
that from the
commission.
city.
they have to get something, they have to get permission from the city of Apalachicola.
Okay.
Any other comment? We'll close up the, land planning meeting and bring back the county commission meeting.
Reconvene the county commission
Reconvene the county commission meeting.
and call for public comment.
Public comment on the ordinance being proposed. Metal structures and pole barns. There being no public comment, commissioner comment. William, you got any comments down there?
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Yes.
like to state a couple things if I could. I just want to make sure the public is aware, the biggest reason I see that we have undertaken to try to do something about metal structures, the county doesn't really have a dog in the fight of whether your house is built with wood or metal. What we do kind of have a fight in is trying to protect the rights of property owners that have had commercial-looking structures plopped in the middle of their R1 district. This is an attempt to stop that replication. That's all it is. We're not trying to regulate and tell people you can't have a pole barn house. This is giving them the framework and the structure that they can move forward and obtain that kind of house. I just want to clarify it for the public.
Alright. Can they build one on the island?
No, sir. No, I mean, they can, but they'll be regulated by the ordinance.
Yeah.
So this doesn't prohibit the use of metal buildings and pole barns as a residence. It regulates it and tells them how they will build it, what the maximum size of the building will be, what the exterior will look like, what the roof line will look like. So it's not that they can't build it, but they can't just take another one of these commercial boxes and turn it into a residential dwelling without now complying with this ordinance.
But they can take a pole. Like the house where Mr. Banks was talking about, can they put one of them on the island? Ricky Banks, when he got up to that day.
I don't remember exactly what Mr. Banks was talking about, but in this case, the answer is yes.
I
As
remember
long as
it
it
was
meets
here, I
this
don't remember
ordinance, they would be able to build it on the island.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes, sir. As long as they comply with the ordinance, they would be able to.
Any other comments from the board? Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve the ordinance.
We got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any further comment? Discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is Mr. Paul Parker, after discussion, toll roads at Alligator Point. Please come forward, state your name for the road. For the record.
Freudian slip.
It's been a long day.
Yes, sir. I'll try not to make it any longer. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Paul Parker. I'm a 27-year resident of Alligator Point. Can't believe it, over half my life now. And believe it or not, there's an issue with our road. I know you haven't heard of that before. And it's fun, I look back and I've got old documents from the old APTA organization. Back in the 70s, they were still having the same discussions that we have today about the road. It's just become more critical, obviously, because the water's a lot closer to the road.
And 70 more years from now.
I hope not. I hope not. But I'm afraid it'll just move. There'll be another road. But so as you know, we've been dealing with our road since Hermine and before that, and trying to find a way to, protect and preserve the road. Working with the commission, and I know you guys know from Alan's reports and the history, it's the most expensive part of the road, the most expensive section of road in the county. And so APTA, we've looked at the beach renourishment stuff as a way to protect the road. We've looked at the armoring. All those things have been considered. We appreciate the county's hard work in following up to get the FEMA money approved. I know Alan's going to give us an update about that, and that's going to solve the immediate restoration of the road that's now a one-lane dirt road. But we're trying, as a group, APTA, the Alligator Point taxpayers, we've discussed different options on how do we do this going forward, because that's just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. That part of the road is going to be protected, hopefully better this year, but parts on either end of that part are not included in that proposal, and they're still going to be at risk. So we talked as a group about how the county, we can work with the county and how it's going to be funded and what kind of approaches to use. And one of the things that we discussed was the idea of can we put a toll on Alligator Drive so that everyone that uses the part of the road that's at risk contributes to the preservation of the road. It seemed like a fair way to, instead of just putting all of the responsibility for, financial responsibility on those who own property in the general Alligator Point area. Sure, we all use the road, but not all the residents and property owners use that section of road. I live on the bay side. I have to use that part of the road to get to my office, but not my house. A lot of my neighbors never ever go to the beach. They never ever drive past that part of the road. So should they have to share in the cost of maintaining a very expensive road that they don't necessarily use all the time? So we talked about it. We're very fortunate, Mr. Berry, John Berry, who's here, he was involved in the Florida toll road system. And so he said, maybe we all talked about it. Could we do a toll road? Well, he was at one of our meetings and said, well, it's possible. It's something that we could look into, but you have to do a study. So the APTA group took it upon ourselves to, with Mr. Berry's help, we talked to the county's engineer. I talked to a number of people at the county about whether or not it was even legal, possible, or feasible to do the toll road. And the conclusion was we needed to hire a professional toll road consultant to look at the feasibility of doing a toll and how much money it would raise, how expensive would it be to do it, is it legal to do it? And with the idea that everyone that uses that section of the road should contribute to the preservation of the road, because they all use it. People that rent houses, people that come down to the beach for the day, people that rent slips at the marina and go to their boat or to the bars or restaurants, that they're not contributing anything to the preservation of the road financially, because there's not really a tax authority in Alligator Point. There's not a place to sell a lot of things to make sales tax money. So we said, okay, we'll at least explore. It's worth investing some money in hiring a consultant to do a very high-level feasibility. And so that's what we did. And we were fortunate enough to be introduced to Gene Brannigan and Clary Consulting, and that's what they do. They help communities evaluate and implement toll roads and bridges in order to raise revenue to maintain those things. So what he did is he did a very high-level preliminary, he called it a white paper, that we sent a copy to you. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at it. And what APTA voted on, we're not endorsing the idea that the toll road is the best way to go. I'm not here to advocate. I think it's something that we should consider, but I'm not advocating that it's necessarily the best way. What we need to do is we're asking the commission today to listen to his presentation and then consider funding the next level of study at a cost not to exceed $20,000. And if that could be used at part of the Ballpoint Trust Fund, then I think that would be personally I think that would be a very appropriate use of that money. And it may turn out that after we go to that next level of analysis that it's not feasible, but it may also still be an option. And this could take years to put together, but we think that it's worth considering. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Gene Brannigan. Sure.
My name is Gene Brannigan. I'm with Clary Consulting. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. I am assuming that you all have a copy of the white paper.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll just go through this, the high points. What I was asked to do was again, to do an early feasibility. This is a put your toe in the water type of view of the opportunity to do this on Alligator Drive. And what we did here, the first thing we addressed was, the most important piece was to address the legal authority to do that. And there is a discussion with respect to the legal authority that the county has to implement tolls on county roads. Alligator Drive is considered a county road, and is designated as such on the Florida roadway system. That same authority was used, to give you an example of where this has been done before, this same authority was used in Leon County to design, build, and construct the Orchard Pond Parkway, which is a 5.2-mile toll facility in northern Leon County connecting Meridian Drive, eastern Tallahassee, over to the west where it ties in Old Bainbridge Road. So we looked at the legal authority, and then what I did for the association was we looked at the potential cost, and this is again at a very high level. This is not an engineering analysis. This is not an engineering estimate. We also looked at the traffic. We went out to the DOT highway count map and pulled up the counts in the surrounding area and looked at the flow of traffic out onto Alligator Drive. Again, at a very high level. There's not been any traffic and revenue analysis done. This is literally just looking at raw data. And we took that raw data and we built what I would call a pro forma financial model. And what that model does is it takes how many trips you expect. What we did on this, we took 10% of the trips that are existing based on the tube counts. We reduced it by 10% the tube count. We took 90% of those trips. Okay, and then we calculated what it would cost to collect the toll for them. We calculated how many different types of vehicles. The tube counts differentiate between trucks or multi-axle and cars. That's how the tube counts work. So what are considered multi-axles may actually be a truck with a trailer behind it. A boat trailer, for instance, would be counted as a 3-axle vehicle, so that would be counted as a truck. We built a pro forma model. We experimented with some toll rates. There was a target number in terms of excess revenue that the association asked me to try and see what it would take to generate excess revenues of X, a specific amount. So that model was built to do that. That's what we did. But again, this is not by any means a final or an investment grade study. It is literally a raw data study. What Paul's asking for, the funds he's asking for are for a professional firm that is specializes in traffic and revenue analysis to come in and look at the types of trips that are made to and from Alligator Point, the frequency of those trips, the likelihood of the effect of a toll on those trips. And that is a specialized firm. That is not what we do at Clary Consulting. We are strategic and financial advisors with respect to toll roads. This would be a separate firm. They would come in and analyze the traffic, do a demographic study of the residents on Alligator Point and the types of people who are visiting Alligator Point. And then you would have a traffic number that is more scientifically proven that we could then plug into a financial model to determine what the toll rate would need to be in order to hit the target number, or what the toll rate should be based on their analysis, and what level of excess revenues that would generate if we did a toll rate like that. We're looking at all electronic tolling. This is not someone sitting in a booth collecting your money and making you wait in line. This is a SunPass integrated single gantry booth, not booth, but a single gantry facility. Trying to think, the other parts of the discussion in the paper for you were a discussion in terms of how to take the excess toll revenues and establish a trust fund with a trust indenture on how those revenues could be used. The purpose that the association asked me to identify in the paper, you will see, is for road preservation. These would be funds that would be available to assist the county with road preservation in the event of storm damage, or in the event of engineering studies that could do additional armoring of the road to help preserve the road in the event of a storm. And I'm open for questions.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. If you're gonna do it on the SunPass base, what are you gonna do for those that don't have a SunPass?
SunPass is interoperable with many other tolling systems, most of them in the southeastern United States, which is where the vast majority of our visitors come from. And SunPass actually will probably, in the next 2 to 5 years, be integrated with a national tolling system. Because most of the eastern United States right now, the majority of states on the East Coast are starting to integrate all their systems. John probably can talk to that with his experience in Florida tolling as well as I can. But there is a movement, and a very strong movement, particularly here in Florida, with our SunPass to be integrated with, it's already integrated with Georgia, it's integrated with, I believe, South Carolina. I think they're working on integrating it all the way up with the electronic systems that are being used up in the northeastern corridor states.
I'm not trying to be differential, we're in a small rural community.
Yes, sir.
And if you don't have SunPass, I guess it means you just don't go down the road? Because if
No,
it's-
sir, you
know
can
the
go
way
down,
to
because we
pay,
can.
That's what I'm getting at.
No, sir,
You
you
get a
you
ticket
could
later.
still use, it's electronic. It will take a picture of
That's
your.
what I wanted to know.
Yes, sir, it'll take a picture of your plate.
Okay.
And then you would get a letter that stated that you know, we have your picture, and it sends you a copy of the picture. I'm a toll specialist. I actually bought a new motorcycle in Orlando and forgot to take my SunPass. And I got the letter the next week that had a picture of me on my brand-new motorcycle driving through. I thought I had it with me, driving through one of the toll facilities, and believe me, most of my business associates had a great time teasing me about that. But we can, it's toll by plate.
They get
I
you
just
one way or
want-
the other.
I just wanted to know.
I have a question too. Who's gonna take, is there gonna be any money deposited in anything?
No, there'll be no
No,
cash.
sir, no, sir, it's all electronic.
Okay.
There's no cash transaction and no line waiting. You know, if you don't have a transponder, you simply go through the facility, we take a picture of your plate, like I said, you get a letter.
Okay.
I got a question. Yeah, like on the toll, now who know, you got a lot of people coming in, don't know they're gonna be a toll. First time, you know, young visitors, like maybe from even over to the Florida State or A&M, they young, they don't know it's gonna be a toll. So that's gonna, man, they gonna get a ticket later on and come back, they got to get that thing in the mail. But I don't think that, it ought to be some kind of way that they can pay as they go in there. I mean, couldn't it be
Just
some
to
day
help-
trippers?
Yes, sir, let me help. First of all, it will be well signed. I mean, obviously, in order to put a toll gantry up anywhere in Florida, you have to sign it. It's absolutely obvious to anyone coming into, it will be very obvious that there is a toll expected. You don't get a citation at first. What you get is you get a notice that you need to make payment of a toll. And in that notice, it also suggests for your future convenience that you purchase a SunPass. Now, SunPass is that they're not as expensive as people think. Everybody thinks you have to buy the portable transponder. That's the more expensive version. There is what's called a sticker pass. That is literally a decal with a small electronic chip that you put in your windshield. It's $5. And once you do that, you establish an account with SunPass. You can use it anywhere in the state and in the southeastern United States.
Before I'm going to college, I got my family coming in, sister, brother.
Mhm.
And we just gonna do this we picked that area just for one day.
Yes, sir. You can just pay. You can pay the amount due when you get your letter, and you're good.
Another thing, in this study, will it determine what the best, whether, you saying a road, right? A toll road. Is that, will that tell us what'll be best for that area, maybe a road or a bridge?
No,
No,
they're just
sir.
looking for a revenue stream
No, sir.
to build something that we will all agree on later.
Oh, whether, we have to agree on what it is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. They're looking, trying to create a revenue stream.
Correct.
As an alternate for the revenue stream that I would propose, which we all know what that is.
And one more question, I guess. What'll be, will this study tell us what kind of sunset or how long we have to do it?
Well, typically, in order to build the facility itself, you will probably finance that cost, typically over 30, 35 years, depending on the financing structure that you use. At the end of the 30 or 35 years, once you've paid off the debt in order to build the facility, then you have the option of leaving the toll on, or you can sunset the toll.
So we will know, well, that's good, because what I'm trying to do is guesstimate how long, and we'll know, what they be expected, whether it be
You
25,
count on 30,
30.
you probably count on 30 years.
Don't
of-
worry about that 35.
We'll see it come in, but we won't see it go out.
I know.
None of us.
Yeah, but
We'll see it come in, but we won't see it go out.
They gonna ask us, the people gonna ask us.
Mr. Chairman, Did y'all do any studies on how many daily trips it would take to pay?
What we used was the information available today, which is a tube count that DOT collects on Alligator Drive and on 98, and we looked at those tube counts, okay? And that is, it's 1,100 ADD, which is 1,100 trips on an annual average basis.
On an annual basis?
Annual
1,200 trips a
average
day.
daily trips,
1,100 trips a day.
A day?
a day.
What I'm saying is, this next study that they're asking for money to do is gonna tell us if there's 200 trips a day happening right now? Or there's
It would look
300?
at it both
That's
seasonally.
part of the study, right?
Yes, sir. It would look at both the seasonal impacts of traffic at Alligator Point, and it would also, then it would build a formula for what you could expect on an annual basis in terms of total trips and the potential revenue you could generate from
And
that.
then you figure out what toll you wanna place on it in order to generate the fund.
And that's part of their study as well. They would suggest on a toll rate, there's a band where you, as you raise the toll, you get to a point of break even or equilibrium, and if you raise the toll any further, you lose traffic. So in other words, you can put a toll on a road and you can see traffic grow to a point, but at that point, if you continue to raise the toll, the traffic will drop down and your revenues will start dropping down because you start losing that traffic even with the higher toll. So they will give you suggested ideas of what the toll rate maximization will be, but also they'll tell you if you use a higher toll rate, this is what you can expect to happen to the traffic.
I'm just looking at the $1.4 million estimated to build the toll station, $75 million a year, $75,000 a year payments for 30 years to pay for that facility. And then utility costs, facility maintenance and utility costs estimated to be $140,000 annually before you ever make anything. And then I read on down, it says, well, you can have, for the people living there, you can have, what's the word I'm looking for here? Reduce, I mean, you can't do, I
Yeah,
don't
you can
think
do,
you're gonna
you
have
can
the
do pass
traffic.
systems, you can do, some people refer to it as frequent flyer programs.
Right.
Which are frequent users.
I mean, I don't know, because I'm not there every day, so I don't know what kind of traffic you have. I mean, we'll have to do that study to see if all these numbers work.
Yes, sir.
And like you said, if it costs them $10 or $12 every time they want to go home, that ain't gonna work.
Right.
Well,
But there's a lot of money here at $1.4 million estimated to build it. You know, $140,000 annually to maintain it. And then you gotta make payments to pay for that facility at $75,000 a year. And what happens if it, comes up short on paying for this thing in 30 years?
Well,
That's why, that's one risk, to be honest with you. The bonding would be done by the county commission, so you would be responsible.
well, that's where I was fixing to come into, Mr. Chairman. I said, as you all know, I sit on the Northwest Florida Transportation Corridor Authority. We have tolling rights as a commission. And I asked our engineer through the toll commission, how many daily trips would you have to have in order to meet the compliance for a toll on a road? And they say, the engineers said, between 35 and 45,000 trips,
A day.
what they said.
No.
And two, on top of that, now that's, I mean, we've done a toll bridge over there in.
Are you talking about Garcon Point?
Huh?
Are you talking about Garcon Point?
Yeah.
Yes,
No,
ma'am.
Yeah, the Mid-Bay
I
Bridge
spent
and all
10
that.
years at DOT having to manage that.
Let me
bridge.
finish what I was saying, and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
we'll go on there. Anyway, I'm just saying what they told us, that it would take anywhere between 35 and 45,000 trips to justify it. And also, you have to have the ability to bond. You have to have that. So the county would be responsible for the bonding mechanism. If it, I don't know whether it'd be good or bad, you know, I don't know. But also, if you'll look, Orchard Pond Road, if you'll read what they said, Mr. Jeff Phipps, if I'm not mistaken, put up part of the money for the Orchard Pond Road. We don't have nobody in Franklin County that's got $4 or $5 million through a public-private partnership that's gonna be putting up this kind of money to see, unless we got some.
There might be some people down there got that
That's
kind
what I
of
was
money.
thinking, so we might have some people at Alligator Point that's willing to do that.
Alan Pfeiffer will.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, I don't like that.
Yep.
I don't like that. But anyway, I mean,
I understand what you're saying.
I'm flexible with this, whatever way y'all wanna go, if y'all, I mean, it looks like they've already done a proposal here to hire the Cleary Company to put some numbers in here.
Well, I think they said they're actually gonna hire another firm to do this next study, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Could I respond, could I help with a couple of the questions?
Go
Because
ahead.
just to help informationally. You don't necessarily have to use a bonding program to do this. There are programs available through the DOT that are, there is a program called the State Infrastructure Loan Bank, which is exactly what was used for Orchard Pond Parkway. And that is not a bonding. It does not use your bonding capacity as a county, but you are obligated to repay the loan. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to have to hit your bonding capacity. And Commissioner Saunders, I apologize for interrupting you. But
That's
you were
all right, I
talking,
get it all the time.
but you were talking about a project that I spent 10 years of my DOT career, the last 10 years of my I spent
Now, I
31
wasn't
years at
specifically talking
DOT.
about that. I wasn't specifically talking
No,
about
I
that
understand.
project. I just put it out there across the board. On an average toll road, how many daily trips do you usually have to substantiate? And they said between 35 and 45,000. Of course, you understand, in that part of the country, they have the service industry on the south and the people that work in the service industry to the north. So they have to find a way that's economical for those people to come across that bridge to go to work.
Right.
So,
That is true for that bridge, and I absolutely support what you're saying. It is different based on the type of cost and the facility's bonding level itself. That bridge was a very expensive bridge, and its traffic is not supporting it right now. I can tell you that for a fact. The other thing is these expenses are not looked at as coming out of the county's revenues. These are looked at as the toll facility revenues themselves are going to support the facility. That's what we're looking to see, is the feasibility of it being self-sufficient, and not only being self-sufficient, but leaving a remainder of excess funds available so that you can do future work on the road when needed. That was the purpose of what we did.
I got one.
Thank you.
I like the idea of a toll, but it can be tricky in this situation. I wanna know, hey, if it's a bridge, I'll go along with it. But what happens if we talking about building a road, and next year, what happens, like, and it keep on doing the same thing it's doing now? If we fix this road out there every day, every year, just, every time they have a blow, we got to fix that road. But is this gonna occur if we just do a toll road? We got to have something that's gonna, hold up.
Yes, sir. And Commissioner Lockley, that you're right. And just to clarify, what his analysis was examining putting a toll on the existing road, and then the money from that toll would be used to help preserve the existing road. There's not unfortunately, a lot of good alternatives for moving the road or building a bridge. Those costs far exceeded anything we could ever collect by a toll. So what we're looking at doing is as you know, when there's not a named storm and there's no federal or state money to help us fix it and the county has to do it, this would hopefully create a pot of money so that when there was an unnamed storm and we need to spend $100,000 or $200,000 to repair that wall and rebuild the road, or $500,000, that we have that money built up from a toll. Because the road's gonna have to be fixed. As a group, we don't want a toll. I mean, if we could do this without a toll, obviously we would rather not have increased taxes or an increase in toll and just have a road that we could always use. But we're trying to be realistic that what's the most fair way to create some kind of fund to preserve that road, because it's inherently difficult. But this does not call for the construction of a new or different road or bridge. This is just a way to fund what we have now and hopefully improve it, hopefully make it stronger. If the toll was successful and we had surplus money and we were blessed with not having a lot of storms, then maybe we would have some extra money to then enhance that road, build a better wall, build a better beach, or whatever it is to better protect the road when we do have a hurricane.
Well,
But-
let me ask Alan a question.
Yes, sir.
Alan, like on a light storm, not a heavy one, what the cost estimate to fix it back? What kind of money we spend, not on a bad storm, like
Right.
a
Well, it really depends, Commissioner, and I can't say that because it just depends. My opinion is that now that we have more of the road exposed to the Gulf, our costs are gonna go up. Up until 2 or 3 years ago, we had that section of road right there in front of South Shoal that was getting damaged all the time. We've moved that away now, so we have a different section of the road that we have to maintain, but it's on one Lime Rock Road, one lane Lime Rock Road right now. Howard, I could create some numbers for you. I'm gonna say $20,000 to $50,000 a year we're spending now on Lime Rock and to maintain that road, coming out of the road department budget right now. I could be way off. I just don't know.
how much we pay to fix it back when the storm, what the last?
It's in here. You, Commissioner, sorry to interrupt, but if you look at this report, he actually included Alan's summary of all the costs that's been, and so, actually, he was right on. I mean, $50,000 to $100,000 with just a tropical storm. But obviously, we all hope that FEMA's gonna fund better armament and better, that's not, I mean, I probably drive by that road, I must be one of the top 3. I mean, because my whole business, my whole life, I go back and forth. And I can tell you that that road where the traffic light, I don't really worry about that part of the road because that has rocks in front of it. What worries me is both ends that are not protected, and it's just gonna take a high tide, and I've seen the water come up close to that road, and there is no seawall, there are no rocks there, and that's the most vulnerable part of the road that people, there's concrete there now or blacktop, but it's very vulnerable. That's-
Alan, so the question is there $20,000 in the ballpoint trust fund to do this?
Well, there is. I mean, there's $450,000 in the ballpoint trust fund. I apologize, it's 1:30 in the afternoon, and we've been here all morning. But I want to be fair to the discussion. It's a great idea. I think the paper has illuminated some opportunities and possibilities here. I'm very impressed with that you all are realistic with every component that I know about. I thought you did a great job. I just want to throw something out there so the whole picture is here. And I sort of back into this thing. One of the reasons they basically picked, I say they picked this, maybe you had your own set of assumptions. But the $250,000 a year sort of revenue, excess revenue they needed, was based upon a projection that I gave them, was how much, that if we did beach renourishment, that's the maintenance cost of beach renourishment that would have to be applied to the property owners out there. That's where one reason the 250 came from. Now, there may be another reason, but so I just want to let you know the basis of the 250 a year, how they backed into their scheme, was that I had made a presentation after months ago, that if we did beach renourishment, $8 million total cost, $4 million comes from the state, as the erosion control I talked about here, $4 million would come out of some of the county function, and that would build the beach to begin with. And then there would be a maintenance cost every 8 years or so, of where you'd have to rebuild the beach about half its capacity. Again, the state could put up $2 million, but we needed $2 million from some local source. And my comprehension was it'd be an MSBU applied to the property owners at $250,000 a year. They're proposing another alternative. Now, they haven't said beach renourishment, and that's certainly fine, because that may not be what they would propose to spend that extra cash on. But you will need some structure out here besides just the road. And maybe a sheet pile will be adequate, we just don't know. So the $20,000 that could be used to pay for the finalized version of the toll road is also possibly, and I'll just be honest with you, the same amount of money that would cost to implement MSBU, just like we tried to do a few years ago. We have to do another study and give an assessment of property value, a number of years and all that kind of stuff. So you have $20,000 you spend on toll analysis, or $20,000 you can spend on MSBU analysis, coming to the same essential goal of trying to create $250,000 a year. So I don't really want to decide right today because we're into this so deep, but I definitely want to get all the cards on the table. You have two approaches, trying to create a revenue stream to protect that road.
And the only thing I would ask Mr. Pierce was, I think we should do both.
That's fine with me.
We should do both and see what it's gonna cost. Okay, we could either do a toll and everybody would pay $2 each way or $2 round trip, and it would generate this much revenue to do, whether it's beach restoration in front of the road to protect it, or build a better wall, or just put money aside. or are we going to vote to do an MSBU? But nothing's free. I mean, the residents, that's what we understand that. So we're trying to offer, we spent our money, our donated money to hire the consultant, and so we're asking the county to go to the next step of analysis, but I think you ought to approve both. I think we ought to do an MSBU study, and we ought to do a toll study so that the residents and the commission, we have alternatives with real information, and we're not just guessing. And there's other aspects that, you know, would it help my business as a real estate broker? I don't think it would necessarily, because not everybody is in favor of, I don't want to pay a toll every time I go to the office or go home to see my family. You know, I'd rather not have to do that, but I understand that nothing's for free. We're gonna have to, that's an inordinate, expensive section of road. We're gonna have to do something. But there's also other aspects. The toll would create great security. I mean, the sheriff has been doing a great job with increased patrols. We have fewer problems with parking and break-in. I mean, the sheriff is really doing a good job. But, you know, there's certain people that don't want their picture taken on the tags. And those people that come and, you know, loiter on the beach and hang out under people's houses and break in, guess what? They're going to turn around when they see all cars are photographed at this point. You know? And that's not necessarily a bad
Is
thing.
there people hauling garbage down there too?
Yes, sir. That's gotten a lot better. Fonda wasn't here, but they're doing a great job. That's a lot better.
I was just gonna say, I'm estimating, no one just said this, if the toll, your toll booth would be approximately where the traffic light is, and might be a variation
No,
of a
that's
couple
part of the-
feet, but
no,
that
that's-
wouldn't be way up here.
That would be part of what the TNR study would do for you. They would suggest the optimal location of that, okay, or locations. So we have not made a decision on it. What I did is the tube count that we used, the primary tube count was right after the new state park entrance. It's up there towards, it's not on 98. There are tube counts on 98 that we looked at just to make sure how the tube count on Alligator Drive looked. But the actual DOT tube count on Alligator Drive is, I'm presuming I'm going to use it south of the new park entrance, heading out towards Bald Point.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and let's get both the studies done, but I want to ask a question because this board took a vote, let a vote be taken many years ago on beach renourishment, and it lost like by 2 votes or whatever. Where would we stand on that if we chose to go with an assessment for beach renourishment or something like that? I just want to know before I make the motion.
Well, make sure, let me reframe the question, make sure I understand. To my recollection, there has not been any action by the board saying you would not move forward with beach tree nourishment.
Right.
What the board, I believe, said, in my recollection, was, y'all, excuse me, y'all were going to respect the vote that had happened at Alligator Point, and you were not going to move forward with the MSBU at that time because they'd been told no approval at the ballot, the MSBU would not go forward. So the board honored that commitment to the people down on Alligator Point, but that does not bind this board from looking at beach renourishment options now or at any point in the future.
But there can't be no action against this board, so we decide to do it then.
Let me ask this.
No, your authority is not restricted in
Okay, I
moving
just wanna
forward
make
with
sure.
with reconsidering beach renourishment, whether you send it to the ballot or don't send it to the ballot. I mean, you have the option of imposing MSB, and actually, I think it was actually an MSTU, not
Right.
MSBU.
Yeah.
But you do have the option, at least the last time we looked at it 8 or 9 years ago, to impose that by ordinance as opposed by ballot. That'd be at the discretion of the board. And Commissioner Sanders, I think I heard you say move forward with both studies. I think since GSG did that original study for us, maybe we could go back to GSG again and have them.
Right, I
use that
had
as a
contacted
baseline.
them 8 months ago or so, and got
Oh, have you?
$15,000 from them 8 months ago for it.
I'd rather proceed with the $20,000 that they wanna do this traffic study and see what that shows us before we.
And then did GS?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm okay with
if the
that.
traffic study shows that this toll road ain't gonna work, and the people really wanna save the road,
That's
like
right.
Mr. Burt here this morning with the decision that we had to make, you know, how can we stop somebody from trying to protect their property, but now we know it's gonna adversely affect his property.
Yeah.
Well, if we'd done beach renourishment, we would've protected all those properties to a certain extent, But you gotta have a mechanism to help pay to put the beach back. Because FEMA, even during a declared hurricane, the way I understand it, FEMA's only gonna pay 50%. Well, you gotta have a revenue to make up the other 50%.
Yes, sir.
And then some.
We can
some
do this
that-
traffic study, but I don't live down there, you guys do. I don't know if you're gonna have enough traffic going through that toll to sustain this. But without that study, you'll never know.
And that's all we're asking.
And the other issue with this is that if this board is gonna be liable, if this toll thing, we do it, the toll thing goes defunct. And this board is gonna have to pay to pay the debt off on this $1.4 million facility. I'm not gonna go to nobody and ask them, if it all goes through, I'm not gonna go to nobody and ask them to see what they want. You understand what I'm saying? Not, and be on the hook too. In other words, I don't wanna have to, as a board, go ask permission. Well, should the board do this or should the board do that? If all this works and we establish it, I mean, I don't want the board to have the money per se, but I want the board to be able to access that money,
Well-
just as we do Ball Point State Park.
It may be necessary, and I just say this is way preemptive.
Yeah.
That, you know, if in fact to protect the board's interest, the MSBU structure be in place so that if the revenue stream fails on the toll road, we have a way of collecting the money from the property owner. So that's.
You can certainly do a fallback like that.
It's a way.
I mean, I just wanna make sure that we all clear, and I know we got a long way to go before we get
so
there, but
that's-
I'm not opposed to giving them $20,000 out of the Ball Point Trust
Well,
Fund.
let me ask you, is that what
to
you,
move
y'all proposing
forward.
that Cleary do the additional study, or?
No, there's a proposal, and actually, the proposal was for 15,000. What we passed as a taxpayers group is to ask the county to fund not to exceed 20,000, but the
Okay.
estimate for the detailed study was $15,000, right?
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
So the motion needs to be made not to exceed $20,000.
That's what I was.
For bid on this thing, we need to say it's a sole source then. I'm trying to protect the board's,
Yeah.
you know, acquisition.
Well, remember, we're talking about hiring someone for a service.
Okay, all right.
Our local bidding policy doesn't apply
Okay.
to service contracts. I mean, the board's got the discretion to send it out to bid if they want to.
No, I don't necessarily want to, I just want to protect.
So I'm gonna ask for pleasure of the board, what do you
Okay,
wanna do?
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion that we give them the approval to go ahead and not to exceed $20,000 on the toll assessment that they're talking about. And that, Alan, you have anything you wanna add?
No, I just, are you all ready to go? And the company
Which will
is,
come out of
who was the
ballpark.
company?
The company is C&M?
C&M?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and the money is supposed to be out of the Ballpoint Trust Fund.
I second that, but I wanna add something. I wanna ask a question.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanders, second by Commissioner Lockley. Discussion?
Yeah, I guess, well, when you look at it, sound good. Back in the days, they put a toll across St. George Island. It had to work, because they took it off, so.
They paid the bond off.
Yeah, huh?
They paid the bond off, it worked, yeah.
So, I guess back then, they were getting about the same kind of traffic as y'all get now, because it
Oh, I
wasn't
see.
developed back then.
A long time ago, right.
Yeah, it wasn't developed, so the traffic wasn't that heavy going over there.
No, you did have the St. George Island State Park down there still, though, that was drawing people. Let me ask you, does Alligator, and I say this to somebody, maybe the attorney, does Alligator Point want to be the one contract and we pay you all, or you want to have the C&M contact us and we contact directly?
Don't you think it's better?
I think
It's a
we
county
need-
road.
we need to have the
Yes,
contract with
It's
them.
a county road.
I think it would be better for the county.
If you'll get them to contact me or.
I've got their
Mr. Brown.
information, I'll be glad to share it with you. I'll give you my card.
Mr. Chairman,
We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion?
I got something I want to add. I know these are preliminary and it probably won't wind up looking this way. But what I'm looking at, over half of the cost, prospective costs, are cost to operate.
It is.
Over half.
That's the hardest part because it's such a small, relatively small volume of traffic, and that was our biggest surprise. When we hired them, we had no idea that the budget to put in this system and maintain it was so expensive. I personally, I thought it would be about half of that. So we were all surprised. And so that's not unlikely the conclusion that we reach is there's just not enough volume, the toll would be too high, it's not feasible, and then we go on to something else. But we just think it's worth at least getting to a conclusion.
Well, I know this is preliminary, it probably might not even wind up looking this way in the end after another study's done. I do understand that. The annual debt service proposed on here, is that talking about the payment of 1.4 million?
Yes.
Correct.
So that'd be paying off in 15 years?
No,
30 years.
It's
What kind of interest rate are we paying?
It's $75,000 a year.
That is,
At 20 years, that's 1.5, sir.
we use the State Infrastructure Bank program for that. The State
Yeah.
Infrastructure Bank program has a lower than market rate interest capability.
What does that have to do with our bond? And I'm new to all this, so I have to ask too many questions.
You would most likely be able to borrow from the State Infrastructure Bank at a lower interest rate than you would be charged to sell general revenue or revenue bonds related to this
And I know
facility.
this is preliminary, but the reason I'm asking, 75,000 a year is 1.5 million in 20 years.
Right, I
So
understand.
There's another 10 years and
We actually,
we've already.
we
Yeah, but you're
actually
not
used,
taxing any
we actually used a
That's what I'm
35-year
saying, what kind of
term.
interest they talking about?
We actually used a 35-year term because the other thing that the State Infrastructure Bank program allows you to do is defer principal and interest payments for the first 4 to 5 years so that you can ramp up your toll collection, okay? And so we did build this pro forma on a 35-year State Infrastructure Bank term. It's just a different type of financing facility,
So it's almost 2.7 million.
roughly, yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to clarify and make sure I'm looking at it right.
Yep.
We do have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, just saying, let me say, I appreciate this, Paul, because I would remind the board and the public that if we don't take some steps, the Ballpoint Trust Fund will run out very shortly. I mean, we got a one-time waiver from the state of Florida for Hurricane Irma, whichever hurricane we just had. Hermine, but even that is gonna dip in. So if we have $450,000 in the trust fund there now, we're gonna, even with the waiver, we're gonna take $150,000 to $200,000 out to repair the road if we get this $3.5
With the
million.
FEMA match.
With the FEMA match. So
Okay.
that's gonna cut the thing in half.
Wow.
So, the trust fund, without some other revenue source, we're gonna be in trouble. So I appreciate you all recognize that we need to create a revenue source to protect that road.
Thank y'all for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Board of County Commissioners going to adjourn